Okay, we are live with a new platform. So everything
It
appears to
works.
be working good. Yeah. Okay, well, hello everyone, and welcome to Paula's Soapbox Live. My guest today is Grammy nominee Matt Muncy of the band Monroeville. They are a unique band that blends rock and alternative and country and bluegrass. And they just came out with a new album called Momentum.
Mhm.
So Matt's going to tell us more about that. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Of course, you guys are so talented. Like I said, I watched you guys perform at the Island in Pigeon Forge just a few months ago, and I was really taken by your unique sound. So yeah, I'm happy to have you on the show to talk about that. You personally started playing guitar when you were 7.
That's
So,
correct.
yeah. So, what prompted you to well, first of all, get into music, and secondly, pick up the guitar as your chosen instrument?
Well, I'm from a musical family, so it was always around, and we were the kind of kids that were always put into piano lessons when you were, like 4, 5.
Yeah,
I never really liked the lessons, so when my dad got me a guitar for my 7th birthday, I kind of took to that playing by ear, and I asked my mom if I could quit the piano lessons. She said if I continued to play guitar, that I could quit the piano lessons, and I did. And then they got me a mandolin on Christmas, well, I believe when I was 12 or 13. And
yeah,
we played together several years as a family, just kind of as a fun thing. We actually were missionaries, so we promoted our mission work by playing together and going to churches and doing that kind of
yeah,
thing. So that was kind of our our whole family was all musical, so it was natural for me to really gravitate towards that.
yeah. So, you didn't like the lessons, the piano lessons, like the structure of it. I'm guessing that it's kind of
No,
like a chore.
I think it's just a better, a kind of a a bigger testament to my personality. I'm more of an entrepreneur. I
Yeah.
work well with people, but I don't always work well under people, I guess you could say.
Oh, yeah.
I do much
Understand
better
that.
working for myself. So, it's a personality, but it suits, entrepreneurs very well. So, I've
Yeah.
just kind of, focused the energy into that.
So, are you mainly like self-taught with the instruments you play?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me and the whole band actually were that way. We're all self-taught. We would pick things up from different people. I know my banjo player took lessons from some people, when he was kind of growing up, but we're all self-taught. The whole band is that way.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I guess that makes for a makes communication better within the band because you guys kind of think the same way.
Yeah, in a lot of ways we do. The band dynamic thing is just one of those things that just takes time, I think, more than anything. And it
Hmm.
takes people that are kind of humble in a way to be able to collaborate. That's
Yeah.
just kind of, and you kind of just have to figure, after this lineup now of Monroeville has been together for almost 5 years now. And, we play together almost every day, and it's just
Hmm.
not a chore. I mean, the guys, we love being around each other, and it's such an easy thing to play together. And when you play that long together, you start to think alike,
Hmm.
the
Kind of
band effect.
anticipate each other's thoughts and
Yeah. And then it's cool too because inside of that, you see people growing as a musician, and when they do something that you don't anticipate, everybody gets excited. They're like, "Whoa, did you hear what he just
oh
did?"
yeah.
And that's really cool because, you see everybody growing as a musician, and that's I mean, not every musician continues to grow. It's a lot of work. You hit these plateaus or like these barriers and stuff, and you just kind of have to keep pushing through them. And
Yeah.
when one of our bandmates kind of breaks through and has, like a nice level up, we're all excited for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's important that there's a supportive collaboration there, and that there's because some bands I know would probably there would be some jealousy and that sort of thing if
Yeah.
somebody like does well, okay, they're doing better than I am at this point, and
Well, it's nice. Like I said, the personality aspects of bands is a big deal, but all of the guys are they're very humble, and they're very kind, and they're very team oriented. So it's easy for us to just really work well together and encourage each other. And, we keep each other in check. You got to do
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, if everybody's humble and there's no ego or anything, then everybody can handle constructive criticism and suggestions. and that sort of thing. And I think that's
Mhm.
important for the longevity of a band, any kind of
Yeah.
collaboration, really.
It is, and everybody recognizes their role, and that's the cool part about it. It's like I was saying about my personality. It's not necessarily that I can't work with people,
Hmm.
just having that type of personality, but there's just a certain position that I serve better as.
Hmm.
And so me being kind of the leader of the group, these guys work very well with that. They're very fine with letting me handle a lot of these responsibilities and them just kind of being responsible for whatever it is that they're given, and
Yeah.
they all do really well with that. They prefer that. So it's a perfect kind of dynamic,
Yeah.
what you would want in a band, the right kind of people in the right positions.
Yeah. Well, I did notice something about like not only the live performance that I saw, but the performances that I've seen on YouTube. Um, there's not like a distinguishing aspect that you're like the leader of the band. It looks like a real collaboration.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a band, and it always has been. I've kind of had to step into this frontman position, a little bit more over the years, mainly just because we had some personnel changeover. And
Yeah.
I always, when I got the Grammy nomination, it was a supporting role in that band. I was working under a front man, but I pretty much managed the whole band for him. I was
Yeah.
basically the band director, and I produced and mixed and engineered all the album for him and everything. So I was real proud to be able to get that achievement, but it was not my band.
Right.
That was my position in that band, and I prefer honestly that position, because being in the front, there's a little bit more pressure on you in that aspect. But Monroeville has always been about a team or a band of highly talented people playing together, and almost like a super group, I guess you would say. And
Yeah.
that's, we've had, like I said, we've had a lot of personnel changes over the years, but everybody that we've ever had in the band was just extremely talented. So we've been able to keep that. But over the last 5 years, these guys have just kind of grown into like this superstar kind of personnel or personality. And it's really cool to see them kind of step into this role. And it's truly a band.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see that happen.
Yeah. Well, you touched on your Grammy nomination, so let's talk about that for a second. This was for the band Second Wind. It
Yep,
was
that's right.
a gospel bluegrass group,
That
correct?
is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So you mixed and engineered the CD that was nominated for the Grammy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
In
when
your
I came
car.
I did, yeah. When I came into this band, the front man was Barry Scott. He had come from Doyle Lawson and Quicksilver, and everybody
Yeah.
in bluegrass knew him. I grew up listening to him, so it was really cool to, get this opportunity to play with him. And Barry's not really business savvy or anything like that, so I was able to kind of really, stretch my legs out there and just kind of really feel that position out, and become kind of that band director slash booking person and everything. Plus, I had always done a lot of, engineering. So they had
Yeah.
already started on a project, but they had started it with the guy named Dale Perry. He's a great engineer. And so we took that, whatever we had from that session, and we built on that session at our banjo player. They had like an extra house that we would use, and his grandparents let us kind of come and stay there and work and everything. So we set everything up in there and recorded everything. And but I didn't really have like a full-time studio or a space, studio space. So I ended up, of course, my thinking is, hey, you listen to albums or CDs in the car. So
Yeah.
that's the place where people are going to listen. So, and that's what I was used to listening in anyway. So I knew what everything's supposed to sound like in the car. So I just you get my laptop and I'd sit in the car for, 4 or 5 hours at a time and mix this album down, and finally, mixed and mastered it, did everything in there,
Yeah.
got it done. And then it, get a Grammy nomination out of it. I was just blown away by it.
What?
Right. And I have to say, I think the reason was because Barry had worked some with Vince Gill, and he had
Mhm.
asked Vince Gill at the time if he ever did a solo project, would he sing on it? And he said, yeah. So
Mhm.
Vince came, and there was another friend that was helping us engineer some stuff on this record as well. And so he came over to his house, and we actually sat down for like 3 or 4 hours recording him on 2 or 3 songs. And I think just having him on the record really, helped get it a little bit more attention.
Yeah, doesn't hurt
No,
at
not at
all.
all. So very honored for that. And it was, it was an achievement that I never would have thought I would have made. And when I started playing music full time in 2000, let's see, well, I was 21 years old, so I can't remember. I think it was 2006, I believe,
Hmm.
um, 2005 or six. But I said, if I don't have any kind of like measurable success in this in the first 5 years, I'll just, I'll move on.
Right.
And that happened, I think, 4 years into that. So I said, okay, well, this is kind of a good sign. Maybe I should stick with that.
Right. Right. Well, you are not the only member of Monroeville to be nominated for a Grammy.
That's right. Yeah, Chevy is as well. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and he
Yeah.
was what, 14?
He was real young. I think he was. Yeah. He had started playing with Todd Taylor, the world's fastest banjo player. If you've ever seen any YouTube videos of this guy, he, had the Guinness World Record for that.
Yeah.
But he was, from somewhere in South Carolina, not far from where Chevy lives. And so he played with him and recorded on this album and was a big part of arranging some of those instrumentals, because he literally is a musical genius. Like
Yeah.
he's very, very intuitive with music. And so anyways, yeah, he got a Grammy nomination for that album that he was on with Todd Taylor.
I mean, when you're that young and you get a Grammy nomination, I mean, where do you go from there? It's like,
And he's so humble about it. Like I'm the one that always has to bring it up. It's like, dude, you cannot, don't let that just slide under the table. Like,
right.
Tell people that, because people respect you if you have something like that to show
Right.
for your work, So don't be,
Yeah.
I can understand being humble. That's fine. There's nothing
Right.
wrong with that. That's how we should be, but be proud of
Right.
the fact that you earned that,
Yeah. Well, and he's not here to dispute it, so we can talk about it.
Exactly. Got you, Chevy.
Right. Well, I understand that Monroeville actually began as a side project when you were a part of Second Wind.
Yeah, well, it kind of, it gets a little bit different than that, I guess, in the way that it played out. But it was just a time I had hired everybody into that band, Second Wind. When I came in, there were a couple people there, and those people kind of had moved around and left, and I would always just, kind of take care of hiring the next people and put the band together.
Right.
So we had some issues, and so we just decided, hey, why don't we just take this crew that we got now? We got a lot of things going for us, and let's just start a new endeavor. And we decided to do that, and we started Monroeville, and we brought a couple of more of our friends in that that we had been around and worked over several years with us. So there were 6 of us originally that started the band, all of who have moved on since then. So I'm the only original one that started that band. But you know how bands are, they kind of, especially bluegrass, they tend to come and go,
Yeah. Well, everybody gets busy with other things, and there's always change in, like you said, personnel.
Life changes, all kinds of crazy things happen. So, I don't blame anybody for anything. And it's been an incredible journey, getting to the point that we are now. But we definitely have the lineup of people that I think Monroeville was always destined to have, because it's just such a great fit with these guys now.
Yeah. Well, tell us the story about how Chevy and Paul came into the band, because I think that's really interesting.
It is. So McCoy is our banjo player. He came on. He's only actually the second banjo player we've had, and he's been here quite a while. He came on in probably 2013, I think. So he's been here, about 7 years or so.
Yeah.
Almost 7 years. And so then Chevy and Paul, they're first cousins, and they're both extremely talented. They've played together their whole life. Chevy's played longer, but Paul, has played with Chevy as long as he's been playing music. But the bass player position was always one that I had a hard time kind of keeping filled. And I had used Paul at one time as a fill-in, and considered him as a permanent member for the band. And so one day I said, the bass player that I had been using had to go on and do some other project. So I just said, I'm just going to call Paul, and I'm just going to give him the job. He's got, I recognized the talent, because I'm always good at recognizing people's potential. So sometimes, you may use somebody, maybe don't feel exactly perfect at that moment, but you recognize the fact that there's potential there, that you're kind of gambling on whether or not they're going to realize their potential. But I always choose to look at the positive of what people and their potential. And it's paid off. McCoy was like that. A lot of people wouldn't offer McCoy, when I hired him, a job, just because, he wasn't their style of banjo playing or whatever, but he was talented and he wanted it more than
Yeah.
anything. And now he's seriously one of the strongest musicians that I've got to work with. So it's, definitely one of those that paid off. So I called and offered Paul the job, and he tells the story about it, that he was actually considering taking another job with a band in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And he had told them just that day, it's like, let me think about it and I'll call you back. He hung up the phone, and literally as soon as he hung up the phone telling that guy, I'll let you know, the phone rang and it was me calling
Mm-hmm.
him. Hey, Monroe, this is Matt. I want to offer you the job with Monroeville. Of course, Monroeville to him was like one of his dream jobs. So it
Yeah.
was just like, he was like, out of stun, loss of words. So he
Right.
hung up the phone and he was just like, oh my gosh, Matt offered me the, so he had to call the other guy and tell him he'd taken another job. Well, the funny thing about it was that was like early September of that year. And within a week from when I offered Paul that job, my guitar player quit. So the way it was supposed to work was the bass player that I was using was going to be leaving like late September. So Paul was going to start late September.
Yeah.
Well, the guitar player quit and he had to quit sooner. So I ended up calling his cousin Chevy and saying, hey, can you come and play the guitar position? Who I'd actually even considered Chevy as the bass player. I'd even called Paul before I knew that he was a bass player, or that he was as good of a bass player, and asked him, well, how well does your cousin play the bass? And he's sitting there thinking, I could be your bass player,
Right.
So I ended up hiring Paul first, long story short, and then Chevy started first. So it was
Yeah.
kind of a weird thing because he started 2 weeks before Paul was supposed to start, and Paul had gotten hired first. But they've both been here, about the same amount of time now. And it's great. It was, I think, a no-brainer bringing on cousins like that because,
Yeah.
part of being in a band is playing together, and they'd already played together most of their life. So
Right.
that's half the work right there. So we just had to kind of figure out how to do it all as a unit.
Right. And you've kind of got that built-in family aspect, and bands kind of have to be family. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We are definitely a band of brothers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're talking about recognizing talent. You're helping to produce other artists, correct?
Yeah, I have. I've produced, several projects for people over the years, and anytime some like cool opportunity like that comes around, I haven't done one in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime an opportunity like that comes around, I just love, just taking people and helping them sound as good as they possibly can,
Yeah. Well, it's something to give back, I guess. And on that note, I want to talk about the RC Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell us about that.
The RC Foundation is a foundation here in Newport, Tennessee, and they're working towards producing events here free for the public. So that's the idea, is in rural communities like our community here in Newport, Tennessee. There's not there's not a lot of money to go towards entertainment. There's not a lot of opportunities for young people to see good music or good art, or lots of things like that. So I think every community really needs to focus more on the arts, because the arts, I mean, you hear these kind of things all the time, but when a child is growing up, one of the first things they do is before they learn to even walk is they dance, or before they learn how to spell or draw words, they do drawings, so that art is inside of us, and it's somehow it kind of gets kind of pushed down and stifled down, but it's a big part of our development, when we're growing up, and being exposed to really good music is going to do nothing but breed better musicians over the years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the general idea of a foundation like the RC Foundation, is to just expose people that don't have the opportunity to hear and see good music, without it being expensive, to little or, no money to get into a concert like that.
Yeah. Well, and music is universal. The arts are universal. That's kind of how we all communicate, regardless of our backgrounds or culture. So I think it's important. So I'm glad that you're doing that. And I think it is important for small communities, especially that maybe don't have a lot of money to bring in cultural events and, that sort of thing to focus on that. So I'm glad you're doing that. They're actually having a thing, or RC Foundation is sponsoring a thing November 23rd
Yeah, I
So
believe so. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I haven't actually worked with the foundation for since the beginning of this year, but I do try to keep up with what they're doing, and I
right.
think it's amazing work. So, I applaud them and everything they're doing right now.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see something like that taking off.
Yeah,
So
definitely, definitely. We definitely need more of that
yeah. Well, like I said, every community could use something like that. So
for
maybe
sure.
this will inspire other people to get involved in the arts in their own communities.
I hope
So,
so. I do.
well, as I mentioned, Monroeville's new album is called Momentum.
Mhm.
The name Momentum, does that come from the Bluegrass Award that?
That's funny. Okay, so that award was actually one I was a part of creating. I was part of
Right.
the team of people that helped develop that whole concept. And when we were looking for names for this album, my wife actually mentioned that name. And I had actually completely forgot about being part of developing the Momentum Awards. I was just thinking in terms of Monroeville's momentum this
Right.
year because we've just had like a great year, and we just kind of feel this energy and everything. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, the one word that sums that up is momentum.
Right.
But it was funny because then I put it together like a week later. It's like, oh man, I helped, devise and plan these new awards for the IBMAs called Momentum Awards. I thought, and we were the first ones to receive the Momentum Band of the Year. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like full circle in a way,
Yeah. It all fits. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You can't plan that stuff out sometimes, but the name of the album was definitely kind of how we were feeling and how our fans feel about the way that things have been going for us. They see us, our fans have been following us, most of them from the very beginning, but at least, for 5 or 6 years they've been following us, our core fan base. And so they see like a definite movement and a
Yeah.
forward leaning direction going on. So it's exciting for them to see all that.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't familiar with your band until earlier this year. Like I said, I went to see Vertical Horizon and I saw you guys perform at the Island in Pigeon Forge. And I could tell just from, I think I was there for maybe the last song, but I could tell just from that, I was like, this band is special. I'm gonna have to try to get them on the show.
Well, thank
So,
you.
yeah, anybody who's in that area, you definitely need to check them out because you're performing at the Island in Pigeon Forge and in Gatlinburg and
Mhm.
around in that area a lot. I would imagine that's really good for practice too because you're playing in
Yeah.
front of a live audience all the time.
It
And
is, yeah, and that whole band dynamic, being together almost every day and playing hours a day, it does help.
yeah,
And we're lucky and fortunate that we have these positions here. The gigs that we have here is mainly for the Old Smoky Moonshine Distillery. We do play a few other things locally, but
yeah,
locally that's pretty much, our bread and butter. But that position kind of came around because when they opened up the Moonshine Distillery, we had already been playing in that area there in Gatlinburg and in that holler before they even came in there. So when they came in, we started just immediately working for them
yeah,
because they recognized that paying people to play just to keep noise drew more people back there.
yeah.
And now they've got 4 million people a year that visit that distillery. It's the most visited
Wow.
distillery in the world. So it's an opportunity for us to get a lot of eyeballs every day consistently and sell merchandise and just have a nice home gig to kind of base our whole operation off of. And we've been able to now learn how to flip this into doing ticketed events.
Hmm.
So now, our big strategy now is to start doing more shows where our fans are located, which is everywhere.
Hmm.
A lot of fans from like Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois, places like that, and then a lot of fans from down in like Florida and Alabama. So we have kind of a nice area that we can go and a huge fan base that we can appeal to buy tickets to our shows.
Yeah,
So we've kind of started doing a lot more of that, and over the last year, and it's been really, it's kind of going to be our plan for next year. Is just really start promoting our own shows.
yeah. Well, and you've kind of gotten in on the ground floor of this whole effort to get like a more of a music scene going with the Old Smoky Distillery, and especially
Mhm.
like the island, and
Yeah,
so
and then, Blake Shelton's come here, and that was like we were like, "Well, there's no way that Old Red's coming to Gatlinburg, and we're not gonna play there, like, we
right,
have to play there."
yeah.
And, so now we're excited, and I don't we haven't really announced it yet, but we're actually one of their featured artists in December, so we'll be actually going out on all of the Old Reds, marketing and stuff as the featured artist in
Oh
Gatlinburg,
wow.
and we'll be on the Christmas parade float for Old Red.
Oh,
So, yeah.
oh well, that's really nice. That's
It
neat.
is. It's nice to have people that really are focused on the music, because as much as we love Old Smoky, they're about moonshine, obviously.
Right,
So
that's the big draw.
everything is geared to selling moonshine, and that's what we're there for. And I understand that, that's what makes,
Yeah,
greases the
yeah.
wheels. But Blake Shelton's all about music. So, when you go to Old Red, the green rooms are just nice. They take care of you so much. And, they just provide, they really put the emphasis on the music because that's what they're about is the
Yeah,
music. So they
yeah,
take care of us and they treat us really well as there. And we're just proud to be associated with some really great brands that appreciate what we do. So,
yeah. And you're building a fan base.
one at a time, and
Yeah,
we own it all. That's the cool thing about it. It's like, people say stuff like, why aren't you guys famous? Like, why aren't you bigger? It's like, well, if you want it there, it's not that we haven't had some more opportunities to kind of do things like that, but we care more about just being true to ourselves, being able to
mhm,
create whatever music we feel like creating and owning it all and being able to do whatever we feel like. And that kind of goes back to my personality, just
mhm,
I haven't been in kind of any kind of big label contract yet. So I
mhm.
don't know really what that's like, but from what I understand, from everybody that I've ever talked to about it, what they say goes, and you lose a lot
Yeah,
of creative control. And so, I think our strategy has been, hey, let's just build our fan base. Let's create whatever music we want to. And if we ever do sign a deal, those fans are going to follow us whatever we do. And that's what I've come to appreciate about our fan base is they, no matter what we do, they support us.
yeah.
So I'd
Well,
rather
things
have
are
that.
different now, I think, for indie artists. They're not it's not the same as it used to be. And I know like well you opened for Vertical Horizon and Sister Hazel, and I
Mhm,
think both of those bands are more independent now. They're not with a major label. So you've kind of
mhm.
seen it from both sides.
Yeah. Well, and fortunately for them, they kind of came around in a time when they took advantage of their deals or whatever, popularity they got, and they were able to turn that over into, a solid tour base or whatever without having to
Right.
compete. Cause I mean, let's be honest, there's so much right now in music and trying to compete to stay on top of it all. I just don't know how people are able to do it. It's just, to try to be the biggest thing, in country or the biggest thing in pop or whatever, that kind of, I mean, the pressure must be just immense. I
Yeah,
just
and
don't
everyone has to wear a lot of hats.
I mean, I just don't see the appeal a lot in it. I mean, it would be nice to have that kind of exposure because then there's a lot bigger, obviously amount of money coming in for you to do things that you'd like to do.
Right.
But there's just got to be so much pressure in that. I would rather, our idea is to just kind of build it slowly, and as we grow, we kind of figure out exactly what we need and what we don't need, and it's a lot of trial by error and a lot of that as well. But we're growing it and we own it all. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to have your unique sound without somebody else trying to put their stamp on it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And producers are nice too. We've been working, we finished up this last album, which we produced ourselves. It's more of just kind of a showcase of our songwriting. It's not like some kind of super polished, production of a record or anything like that. But as soon as we put it out, or even before we put it out, we already scheduled some studio time with a producer in Nashville, which is the first time we've used a producer since 2010. So it's been a
mhm.
long time. We've always produced our own stuff.
Yeah.
And it's been really great. The guy's really wonderful. He's the guy that produced Luke Combs' Hurricane and
Mm.
a lot of the This One's For You album, which has been huge, and his name's Ken Royster. So we went in with 5 songs and we recorded 3. and we'll be putting that stuff out next year. And who knows what we'll be doing with that, but the stuff
Yeah.
sounds great.
Yeah. So is this a part of the new album you're working on? Because you're working on another one in addition to the one that you just released,
We're
right?
working on a lot of stuff right now. We've decided we want to record some more bluegrass because we hadn't done any kind of traditional bluegrass. Monroeville has always been just about expanding the boundaries and just kind of doing whatever, I mean, bluegrass came about because Bill Monroe was expanding his boundaries and creating an original sound with what he understood and knew.
Yeah.
So that's why we call it Monroeville, is in tribute to the father of bluegrass, Bill Monroe, who created the genre because he didn't want to sound like anybody else.
Yeah.
And
you
so
guys don't sound like anybody else.
if there's one thing you can say we do, that's what we definitely do. Is we're definitely unique, and that's the idea. Is we don't want to sound. We want to have enough of some familiar sounds in there, or some things that you would recognize, to where you could be like, wow, that kind of reminds me of this, or kind of reminds me of that, but it doesn't, it isn't exact, because we have so many influences that you can't help that stuff from coming out in your music.
Right. Yeah.
But our ideas are really to just continue to create music that is completely outside of genres, or even so, like, some stuff may be a little bit more genre specific, but that doesn't mean that's where we're staying, the lane that we're staying in. My idea for this coming year is to have bluegrass, country, pop, and gospel styles of stuff coming out all at the same time, basically.
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out how to do that in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not everything is music in your group. I understand that you and one of your bandmates, I think it was Chevy, was that you were in a scooter accident on the same day. How did that happen on the same day?
Well, it's embarrassing, but we
have to tell one embarrassing story.
We have to, yeah. I mean, it's got a good ending. Yeah, so we were doing a photo shoot and some promo work with our team from Knoxville. They're called Promotion.
Yeah.
And so we had shot this live session with them, and we decided we were going to do a photo shoot. So we went to downtown Knoxville. And Knoxville's got these electric scooters that they've got in Nashville or anywhere else. And, big city, they have these scooters that are just everywhere on the sidewalk. You just pick it up and pull it up on your app, and you can just ride it. Right. And these things are they're no joke. A lot of people, I mean, the day that we fell on our scooters, there were 2 people in Atlanta died on the scooters. Yeah. So they are no joke. They will go 20 miles an hour with wheels like this big. So it's a lot of people get hurt on them. But we were riding them. What happened was we saw them while we were doing the photo shoot. We were like, hey, let's all get on a scooter and let's get a picture of us, on the scooter, just for fun.
Right.
So we did that, and everything went great. It was a wonderful day. And then we were down at this place. It was closed off. So it was this big parking lot, and there were these kind of divots in the road and these potholes. And we were riding and grinding. We were doing stuff you're not supposed to do, basically.
Right.
So I was the first one to fall. We had been going over this thing, and I was getting air on this thing, and I came down and I went over the handlebars and fell, and actually fractured my radial bone on my elbow, and I didn't know it. So I'm getting up. I'm like, just walk it off, walk it off. And I got lightheaded because of just the impact. So I sat down in my truck, and I was just sitting there, and then McCoy comes riding up. He says, Chevy just fell and busted his head open. There's blood everywhere. And so Chevy comes over, and sure enough, his face is just covered in blood, and he had fallen and hit his head, and his sunglasses cut him right here on his eye, and it just gouged him right there real bad. And so, yeah, we injured ourselves, and luckily it was nothing permanent, but
right. Yeah, that could have been bad. That could have impacted some of your gigs really bad.
I tell the guys all the time, and I'm always so careful, with everything. And I've never broken a bone in my body ever, because I'm very careful. And then I'm just eating my words. It's man.
Right. So you wait until you're an adult, and then you start.
Yeah. That's what I get for being stupid.
Well, that happens sometimes. So
I think we all get one, right?
Right. I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. Well, you mentioned your wife earlier, and she's also a singer songwriter too.
Yeah.
So, have you guys done a lot of collaboration for the band?
Oh yeah, the whole Momentum album is mostly me and Brittany writing the songs, and even the stuff that we've done with the band. She's been there. So she
Yeah.
actually when we got married last year, she took a job for a while, and then this time last year in October of 2018, I said, look, I said, we're so busy out here, and her and I have had our merchandise line for a while now. Before we got married, we'd started that business together,
Yeah.
in hopes of, after we get married, we could grow our merchandise and our product line and stuff. So anyway, she came and she quit her work and just started coming with us to the gigs full time to just sell merch.
Mm.
And then she started, writing some amazing songs and started getting her up there to play, her songs, and people just absolutely loved her and just went
Yeah.
nuts for her. So she's actually just kind of working her way more now into the band, where she's just kind of, we're growing Monroeville, it's just kind of taking on its own life. And we've talked
Yeah.
about the 3 songs that we just cut with Kenny. She's on, one of them is actually her song. The second one is a duet between me and her, and the third one is my song, but she's still singing on it.
Hmm.
So, she's kind of getting integrated into that. So we were like, oh, do we need to rebrand Monroeville, or does it need to just be Monroeville is just growing, or what? I don't know. But all of our fans understand that she's part of it. So,
Right. Right.
it's just trying to figure out how to convey that to the greater world and, the
Yeah.
industry and all that. So yeah, we've actually, with our team, have been talking about how to do all that, but she's so talented. Everybody loves her. So she's
She has
starting
a
to come
beautiful
up.
voice.
Oh,
I
she's a
saw one of
great
the
singer.
videos you guys did together. She has a beautiful voice.
Yeah,
So,
she's a great singer, and people just love it. And Ken, he loved her voice. The producer, he was just like, wow, you got a beautiful tone. And, so the
yeah.
stuff's going to be really cool. So yeah, it's nice to see how that's kind of naturally taken its growing into what it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really neat. It's neat how things work out like that sometimes.
Yeah, you can't plan stuff like that. You just gotta.
No.
I'm
No.
a I'm a big I'm big on just going with the flow, and
Yeah.
I've learned how to kind of find where the energies are and just kind of go with that. And I'm a very spiritual person. Big
Mhm.
believer in my faith, and I feel like I've just been really kind of been guided into these places because I'm just willing to just be guided, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's you couldn't plan stuff out like that. It's just, you just kind of have to let it happen.
Yeah. And usually that's for the best.
Hmm.
We tend to muck things up a lot by trying to over control everything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Sometimes letting go is the best way to go.
right. Well, I want to mention again that your new album, Monroeville's new album, Momentum, it's out now. It just came out
Mhm.
in October, so it's brand
Yeah.
new. You can buy it on iTunes and Spotify, Amazon, and on the Monroeville website,
That's right.
uh, monroevilleband.com. Do you guys have any plans to release a vinyl version?
Not yet. I'm always trying to find ways to bring income in. And if I knew that I had at least, 300 or 400 people that would be interested in buying vinyl, I would do that.
Right,
But most of my fan base are still using CD players. But, I'm always trying to figure out ways to, keep money coming into the business.
right.
So it's not out of the question. We may do it.
Yeah,
Just depends
yeah,
if we can sell enough of them. You can see I've got a vinyl player behind me
yeah.
here. I listen to a lot of music
Oh,
on it.
yeah, yeah. That seems to be everything's kind of going in that direction again. So,
Yeah, it's weird because, our job in Gatlinburg, one of the things that's kept me there so much is that because people don't pay to come see us there, they have a little bit more, they it's not hard for them to decide to either put money in our tip buckets or to buy a
mhm,
CD or something like that. But CDs sales this year, just even since the middle of the year, have just the bottom's just dropping out of it. And
yeah,
here I have, I ordered like 2,000 CDs. I don't know how long it'll take me to sell that many because people just aren't buying CDs so much.
yeah, Yeah.
But people do like to have a souvenir. So when they
Yeah.
come, they like to have something to remember us by. So whether that's a USB stick or a T-shirt or something, they want to like have some kind of tangible thing to walk away
Right.
with, or have something to have you sign. So we're always trying to figure out cool ways. And vinyls are collectible because they're nostalgic and
Right.
they're cool like that. So it doesn't
Mhm.
surprise me because there's a lot of people out there that may use streaming, but they still like to collect stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely like to have a hard copy of something. Downloading is all well and good, but I like to have something, like you said, tangible to
Hmm.
hold on to. And
Yeah.
especially if you're in a place like the Island or somewhere like that, somewhere in Gatlinburg at the Old Smoky Distillery, you want to have a souvenir,
Yeah,
especially if you're not
exactly.
from that area. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
um, so tonight you guys are going to be performing in the Holler at Old Smoky Moonshine in Gatlinburg from 5
Yeah.
to 11. That's a long gig.
Yeah. That's one of the longer shifts, the 6-hour shifts on the
Yeah.
weekends. Yeah.
Yeah. And then tomorrow night you're going to be at the Island at the
Hmm.
Old Smoky Moonshine in Pigeon Forge from 5 to 10. And we
Yeah.
we mentioned this earlier before we started broadcasting live. You guys perform even in the cold outside.
Yeah. 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 We've we've had to actually shovel snow off our stage so we could play for the day.
Yeah, it
So
gets
yeah.
cold in the mountains. So,
It can, we love it here, but it can definitely get chilly, especially the island. There's, the holler is kind of sheltered, as you've got
yeah,
kind of these walkways behind you and on top of you and around you and stuff. But at the island, it's wide open, so
there's nothing there. You got the Ferris wheel and the fountain in between.
it gets cold out there.
Yeah. Yeah, how does that affect your voices? Is that
I
ever a
mean,
problem?
it can be, I've learned how to layer in a way that you stay, but that cold air, I've got a sinus infection right now.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
just like, oh, I get done and my sinuses are just inflamed and just pounding. So, yeah, it's not obviously the ideal way to make a living, but I always look at, I'm a positive kind of person. It's like, well, I know a lot of people that do jobs outside this time of year. You could be
Yeah.
digging a ditch, you could be a lineman working on power lines right now. I mean, there's so many great jobs that you make a good living at that you have to do that kind of work.
Right.
And,
Right.
I mean, if that's the price we have to pay to do what we love, is it really that bad?
Right. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
The,
Yeah,
I've
and
had I've had a lot of people come through the band that was make or break for them, and I'm like, that's fine. You got to do what you feel, but if you really want to do it, it wouldn't be too hard. If you're
right.
getting paid for it.
Right. Yeah. Um well, let's mention the other members of Monroeville again. I know we've kind of touched on their names, but I want to get their names out there too. You've got McCoy Borg.
Hmm.
Interesting name he has.
Right?
It's a little hard to
Totally,
say.
totally suits him though. He's one of a kind. Yeah,
Yeah. And Chevy Watson,
yeah,
Paul Watson,
yeah,
cousins.
yeah,
And you have a drummer that he kind of comes in and out, I guess, Evan
yeah.
Pitchers.
Evan Pitchers, yeah, and then also on the same kind of plane that he is our violin or fiddle player, Aaron Malone. He comes
Okay.
in and plays some events with us as well. Those are the kind of the outliers, I guess you would call them, that come in when we need. I guess when at the Vertical Horizon, you would have seen Evan there with us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's certain gigs that I'm like, well, we really need to, have our drummer there. We just did our album release and we did it with 300 kids in a youth orchestra. And because Aaron, the violin or the fiddle player, he's a classical composer, musician, I wanted him to be there because these kids, may go into, more formal classical training and stuff. And he grew up his whole life in that world. So
Hmm.
having him there was really amazing. And he's one of the best musicians I've ever worked with. So it was, getting to play with him is amazing. But he's out of Washington, D.C., so we only get to play together every now and then.
Yeah.
So the core would be the four of us, and obviously Brittany. She's part of
Yeah,
that now.
obviously Brittany, and it sounds like Brittany's going to become like more integrated into the band as you guys go along. So I'm excited to see how that
Yeah. Well, she
progresses.
makes us look a whole lot better too. So
Well, Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on today. I hope that at some point we can try to get some other members of the band on here. Maybe you guys can play a little something for us at some point. That would be nice.
We could do that. Yeah, we could do that sometime.
That would be nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
And anybody who's out in the Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area, be sure to check these guys out because they're nice guys. You're a nice guy. The rest of them seem like nice guys. So they're nice guys, and they're just super, super talented. You won't regret it. So
awesome.
Thanks again.
Thanks for having me, Paula.
Of course. Anytime.